Farmer trades daughter for a horse, but what the man does. Eleanor Harrison held the pen with trembling hands as she looked at the contract on the kitchen table. At 62, she never imagined she would reach the point of signing a document that would seal the fate of her only daughter. It was when she saw the white horse grazing in the backyard that her tears finally fell. The animal was beautiful, majestic, but it represented the price she was paying. Clara, her 22-year-old daughter, would be given in marriage to the owner of that horse to settle the debts that had been suffocating the farm for months. "Mother, what are you doing?" Clara's voice echoed through the house at the exact moment Eleanor signed the last line. Eleanor raised her face, meeting the shocked gaze of her daughter standing in the kitchen doorway. Clara had just arrived from town, where she had gone to fetch medicine for the sick cattle. Her brown hair was tied in a simple ponytail, and the brown dress she wore was dusty from the journey. "Clara, I can explain." Eleanor tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. "What contract is this?" Clara approached the table, her eyes scanning the document. "Marriage agreement? Mother, what have you done?" Eleanor closed her eyes, unable to face the growing despair on her daughter's face. For 22 years, she had been both mother and father, ever since Thomas Harrison lost his life in a tractor accident. She had always promised Clara that she would be free to choose her own destiny, something Eleanor never had the chance to do. "The debts, Clara. The bank will take our land next week. We had no other way out." Clara picked up the contract with trembling hands. Her tears began to fall as she read each line. Marriage agreement between Clara Harrison and Grant Sterling. In exchange for the complete settlement of the debts of Meadowview Farm, amounting to $300,000, Clara would be given in marriage within 15 days. "You sold me like cattle," Clara shouted, throwing the paper on the floor. "How could you do this to me?" "I had no choice." Eleanor stood up, holding her daughter's arm. "Do you think this was easy? Do you think I wanted this?" Clara pulled away sharply, as if her mother's touch burned. 22 years of love, care and protection seemed to have been erased in a moment. The young woman who dreamed of studying veterinary medicine in New York City, who had saved every penny working at the local farmers' cooperative, saw her plans crumble. "When does he arrive?" asked Clara, her voice colder than Eleanor had ever heard. "Tomorrow at noon." Clara nodded slowly, wiping her tears. Without saying another word, she left the kitchen and locked herself in her room. Eleanor heard the muffled sobs through the wooden door and felt her heart break into pieces. She had made the most difficult decision of her life, but she knew it was the only way to save what remained of Thomas's legacy. The night passed slowly, with neither of them able to sleep. Eleanor sat on the porch watching the white horse that grazed peacefully, oblivious to the suffering its presence represented. The animal was truly magnificent, with a smooth coat and well-defined muscles. Grant Sterling had explained that the horse was a purebred Arabian, valued at over $100,000. Clara spent the night looking out her bedroom window, trying to process the betrayal by the person she trusted most. She remembered her mother's promises, how she always said Clara would have chances she never had. Eleanor had married at 16 in a similar arrangement and had always sworn her daughter would be different. When the sun rose, Clara went down to the kitchen and found her mother making coffee, as if it were a normal day. Eleanor avoided her daughter's gaze, focusing on the usual mechanical gestures. "He is a good man," Eleanor murmured, without looking up. "Grant Sterling. There's a large farm in Oak Creek, 2 hours from here. 35 years old, never been married. And that's supposed to comfort me?" Clara poured a cup of coffee but didn't drink it. "How do you know him?" "He approached several farms in the area, offered financial help in exchange for marriage. Other families are also going through hard times." Clara felt her stomach turn. Grant Sterling was buying wives like someone buys cattle, and she would be just another acquisition in his collection. "Why didn't you sell the horse instead of selling me?" Eleanor finally lifted her face, showing eyes red from crying. "The horse is part of the deal. He said it would be your wedding gift." The sound of hooves in the yard interrupted the conversation. Grant Sterling had arrived, riding another horse, a brown sorrel. Clara ran to the window and saw a tall man dismounting. He wore dark, elegant clothes, black hair combed back, and had a confident posture that irritated Clara instantly. "He's early," Eleanor whispered, nervous. Clara watched as the man tied the horse to the gate and walked toward the house. There was something in his expression she couldn't decipher. It didn't seem like the presumptuous smile she expected from someone who bought women. In fact, he looked tense, almost reluctant. Eleanor opened the door before he could knock. "Mr. Sterling, welcome." "Mrs. Eleanor?" Grant removed his hat, greeting politely. "I hope I'm not intruding. I know we agreed on noon, but—" His eyes met Clara's, who was standing in the middle of the room with her arms crossed and a defiant expression. Grant stopped mid-sentence, studying the young woman's face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "This is my daughter, Clara," Eleanor introduced, trying to break the silence. "Miss," Grant nodded but didn't approach, "I'd like to speak with you alone, if possible." Clara was ready to explode, but Grant's response caught her by surprise. He wanted to talk to her, not to Eleanor. That wasn't in the script she had imagined. "With me?" Clara asked, suspicious. "Yes. I think we have some important things to discuss before anything else." Eleanor seemed equally surprised but nodded positively. "Of course. You can use the porch. I'll see to lunch." Clara didn't want to talk to that man, but her curiosity won out. She went out to the porch, keeping her distance as Grant closed the door behind him. "Go ahead," Clara said, crossing her arms again. Grant walked to the fence surrounding the yard, turning his back to her for a few seconds. When he turned around, Clara saw something in his eyes she didn't expect: conflict. "You don't want to marry me," he said, more as a statement than a question. "Obviously not." "And I don't want to marry you." Clara blinked, confused. "Then why are you here?" Grant sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "Because my situation isn't much different from yours." "What do you mean?" "My farm is mortgaged. The bank will foreclose in 3 weeks if I can't get $200,000. My mother has diabetes and needs expensive treatment. And there's more." Grant looked at the ground before continuing. "My mother made a deal with your mother without consulting me. Promised to settle your farm's debts if I married. She believes an arranged marriage will make me settle down and take better care of the business." Clara felt the ground give way beneath her feet. "So you're a victim too?" "In a way, yes. But the difference is I have more power in this situation. I can choose not to go through with the deal. You don't have that option." Silence stretched between them as Clara processed that revelation. Grant wasn't the villain she had imagined. He was just another pawn in the cruel game of family circumstances. "Why are you telling me this?" Clara asked. "Because I think we can find a solution that works for both of us." Clara took a few steps closer. "What kind of solution?" "We pretend we're going to get married. That gives me time to sort out my financial problems another way, and keeps your mother from losing the farm immediately. In the meantime, we look for real alternatives." "And if we don't find alternatives?" Grant looked at her directly. "Then we'll get married for real, but as a partnership. No love, no intimacy, just as a way to solve our mutual problems." Clara felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief because Grant didn't seem like a monster. Fear because the situation was still desperate. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. "I need time to think," Clara finally said. "Of course. But you need to know my mother is coming tomorrow to meet you. She can't suspect anything." Clara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. She had less than 24 hours to make a decision that would change her life forever. Grant walked to the door but stopped before opening it. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "What would you do if you had complete freedom to choose?" Clara didn't hesitate. "I'd study veterinary medicine. I'd care for the animals in the region, maybe travel a bit before settling down." "And marriage?" "Only for love. And only after I've lived my life first." Grant nodded slowly. "I hope it's still possible for you to get all that." After he left, Clara found Eleanor in the kitchen, eager for details. How did it go? Did he seem kind? More than I expected, Clara admitted. Mum, you need to tell me everything about the debts, exactly how much we owe and to whom. Eleanor hesitated, but ended up telling the whole truth. After last year's drought and the illness that killed half the cattle, the farm had accumulated debts with the banks, suppliers, and even neighbors who had lent money. The total came to $320,000, more than the property was worth. Thomas always said this land would go to you, Eleanor said, tears welling up again. I couldn't keep that promise. Dad never imagined a drought like last year's, Clara consoled, surprising herself by defending her mother. It's not your fault. That night Clara barely slept again. Grant's proposal seemed sensible, but it involved lying and pretending feelings that didn't exist. On the other hand, what was the alternative? Run away and let her mother lose everything. The next morning, Grant returned accompanied by an elegant woman of about 60. Mrs. Martha Sterling wore a navy blue dress and discreet but expensive jewelry. Her grey hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, and she examined everything around her with critical eyes. Mrs. Eleanor, a pleasure, Martha greeted politely but coldly. This must be Clara. Clara forced a smile. Yes, ma'am. You may call me Mrs. Martha. After all, we'll soon be family. The way she said family made it clear Clara would be merely an addition, not a daughter. Clara exchanged a quick glance with Grant, who looked as uncomfortable as she felt. Grant told me you two spoke yesterday, Martha continued. I hope you've reached an understanding. Yes, we have, Clara replied, deciding in that moment to accept the pretense proposal. Excellent. Then we can settle the final details. The wedding will be in 15 days, in Oak Creek. I've already reserved the church and the hall for the reception. Eleanor looked shocked. 15 days, isn't that very fast? My dear, Martha smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. The sooner the better. Young people can change their minds, can't they? Clara felt a chill. Did Martha suspect something, or was she always this controlling? Of course, Mrs. Martha, Clara agreed. I can hardly wait. Grant looked at her, surprised by her convincing performance. Clara was discovering she had a talent for pretending when necessary. Excellent. Grant, could you show Clara our future home? I'd like to speak with Mrs. Eleanor alone about some details. Clara followed Grant out of the house, relieved to escape Martha's suffocating presence. Your mother is intense, Clara commented when they were far enough away. That's a polite way of saying she's controlling and manipulative, Grant replied. But thank you for going along with the charade. I still don't know if it was the right decision. They walked in silence to where the white horse was grazing. The animal lifted its head when it saw them approaching, whinnying softly. He's beautiful, Clara admitted, reaching out to stroke the horse's neck. His name is Thunder. He had another owner before me. Clara stopped petting the horse. What do you mean? I bought him from a family who was struggling. A farmer from Greenfield who needed to sell some animals to pay his wife's medical bills. When did this happen? About 3 years ago. Why? Clara felt her heart race. Greenfield was only 30 miles from there. Her father had sold a white horse 3 years before the tragedy that took his life. What was the man who sold him like? An older gentleman, around 50, with greying hair. Thomas something. Clara had to lean on the fence. Thomas Harrison. Grant stared at her, surprised. You know him? He was my father. The silence that followed was deafening. Grant ran a hand over his face, clearly shaken by the revelation. Clara, I didn't know. If I had known... I grew up riding this horse, Clara whispered, tears beginning to fall. Daddy taught me to ride him when I was 7. You can have him. I don't want anything in return. No, Clara wiped her tears. That doesn't solve our problems, and you paid for him honestly. But no, Grant. We can't make decisions based on emotions. We have to be practical. Grant admired her strength, but saw the pain in her eyes. Clara was forcing herself to be rational in a situation that was tearing her heart apart. Across the yard, Martha watched from the kitchen window, noting their closeness. To her, it looked like an intimate conversation between future fiancés. Eleanor, beside her, also watched, but with conflicting feelings. "They seem to be getting along well," Martha commented. "Clara is a good girl. She'll take good care of your son." "I hope so. Grant has always been very independent. He needs a wife to keep him in line." Eleanor felt a pang of indignation. Clara wasn't an object to control Grant, but she chose not to respond. When they returned inside, Martha announced she had brought the wedding dress. "It was mine, but I had it altered for Clara, a Sterling family tradition." The dress was beautiful but clearly dated. Full skirt, long sleeves and a high neck. Clara tried it on in the bedroom, feeling as if she were wearing a period costume. "It's perfect," Martha approved when Clara came out to show it. A true Sterling. Clara forced another smile, but inside she felt as if she were losing her identity piece by piece. After the Sterlings left, Clara and Eleanor sat down to dinner in silence. Finally, Eleanor broke the silence. "Do you like him?" Clara almost choked on her food. "Why do you ask? You two seemed close today. We're trying to get to know each other. It's the least I can do since I'm going to marry him." Eleanor nodded, but Clara noticed her mother wasn't entirely convinced. "Clara, if you've changed your mind about the marriage, there's still time to—" "No," Clara interrupted. "I've already made my decision." But later that night, alone in her room, Clara allowed herself to cry all the tears she had held back during the day. She was embarking on a lie that could last the rest of her life, had discovered that her future husband owned the horse that belonged to her father, and still had to pretend to be happy about it all. The next day, Grant arrived alone, bringing worrying news. "My mother wants to speed up the wedding. She's talking about having the ceremony this coming Friday." "That's in 6 days," Clara exclaimed. "She said she has a bad feeling about delays. I think she suspects something." Eleanor, who was listening from the kitchen, approached. "But we don't even have the documents ready yet." "My mother has connections. She can expedite the paperwork," Grant explained. "The question is, do you agree?" Clara looked at her mother, who was visibly nervous about the rush. "We don't have a choice," Clara finally said. "If Mrs. Martha suspects anything, she could cancel everything, and then we lose our only chance to save the farm." Eleanor nodded reluctantly. "Then it will be Friday." Grant seemed relieved. "Thank you. I know this isn't easy for either of you." After he left, Clara locked herself in her room again. 6 days. In 6 days, she would be a married woman, living a farce she didn't know when or how would end. On Wednesday, 2 days before the wedding, Clara decided to go to town to try and find some information about legal alternatives for the farm's debts. She told her mother she was going to buy a few things for the wedding. At the Hartford State Bar Association office, a young lawyer received her and listened carefully to her situation. "You need to understand that marriages arranged for financial reasons are not illegal if both parties are of age and consent," Dr. Miller explained. "But I can review the farm's debts, see if there's any irregularity." Clara handed over all the documents she had brought. Dr. Miller examined them carefully, taking notes. "Some of these fees seem too high," he murmured, "and the late payment interest is beyond the legal limit. Does that mean we can contest it? I can try, but it will take months, and in the meantime, the bank can foreclose on the mortgage." Clara felt hope wither. "So there's nothing we can do?" "In the short term, no, I'm sorry." She left the office even more desperate than before. On her way home, she stopped in the town's central square to collect her thoughts. It was there that she ran into Mrs. Gable, a neighbor from the farm. "Clara, dear, I heard you're getting married on Friday. What's the rush?" "Oh, Mrs. Gables, it's just that—" Clara didn't know what to say. "Let me tell you something." Mrs. Gable leaned in, lowering her voice. "Yesterday, I overheard a strange conversation at the bank. The manager, Mr. Vance, was on the phone talking about fixing some farmers' accounts. He mentioned your name and 3 other families." "What kind of fixing?" "I didn't quite understand, but it seemed like he was, how can I say, adjusting the numbers upward." Clara felt her blood run cold. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am. And it's not the first time I've heard gossip about Mr. Vance. They say he charges fees that don't exist, especially from those with little education. Clara thanked her neighbor and ran back home, her mind racing. If the bank manager was running a scam, perhaps there was a way to cancel the debts without the arranged marriage. At home, she told her mother everything, who was initially skeptical. "Clara, we can't accuse the bank manager without proof." "Then let's go after the evidence." They spent the entire afternoon reviewing the bank documents, comparing them with the original contracts Thomas had signed. Eleanor, who had little formal education but knew her husband's business well, began to identify discrepancies. "Here," Eleanor pointed to a line on the statements. "Thomas never took out this life insurance. And this administration fee." Clara found another irregularity. "It's 3 times higher than originally agreed." The more they investigated, the more inconsistencies they found. It was clear someone had manipulated the accounts to artificially inflate the debt. On Thursday, the day before the wedding, Clara sought out Grant to tell him of her discoveries. "If we can prove the fraud, I can call off the wedding," she said anxiously. "Clara," Grant replied calmly, "even if you can prove the fraud, it will take time. And my mother already paid part of your debts yesterday." Clara was confused. "What do you mean?" "She transferred $100,000 to your mother's account as a sign of our agreement. If we cancel now, she'll demand the money back." "But it's money we don't even truly owe, that you'll have to prove in court. And in the meantime—" Clara felt cornered again. Even with the possibility of proving the fraud, she was trapped by the circumstances. "There's one more thing," Grant continued. "I did some investigating on my own and found out the bank manager did the same thing to other families. One of them is the Brooks family from Oak Creek." "And what does that have to do with you?" "Arthur Brooks is my neighbor and was a friend of my father before he passed. If the manager pulled the same scam on him too, I might have more solid evidence." Clara felt a glimmer of hope. "Did you speak with him?" "I'll speak with him tonight after the wedding rehearsal dinner." "Rehearsal dinner?" Grant made a face. "My mother organized it. You can't miss it or she'll suspect everything." Clara nodded, preparing for another night of pretense. The dinner took place at the best restaurant in Oak Creek. Martha had invited some close family friends, creating the illusion of a normal, happy wedding. Clara wore her best dress and tried to look like a radiant bride. Grant played his part as the passionate groom well, even holding her hand during dinner. "You make a beautiful couple," commented one of Martha's friends. "When Grant told us he'd found the woman of his life, we didn't believe him." Clara almost choked on her wine. Grant squeezed her hand lightly, a signal for her to keep her composure. "It was love at first sight," Clara managed to reply. "Isn't it, darling?" "Completely," Grant agreed, looking into her eyes with an intensity that almost made her believe it was real. The rest of the night passed in a haze of false conversations and forced smiles. When she finally got home, Clara was emotionally exhausted. "How was it?" Eleanor asked. "Like a very well-rehearsed play," Clara replied, taking off her shoes. "Mum, this time tomorrow I'll be a married woman." Eleanor came closer and hugged her daughter. "Clara, I want you to know I don't judge you for anything that happens. You are the bravest person I know." "I don't feel brave. I feel like a liar." "Sometimes life forces us to choose between several bad options. You chose the one that gives us a chance to start over." Clara slept poorly, waking several times during the night. When the sun rose on Friday, she got up knowing it would be the last day of her single life. Eleanor had prepared a special breakfast with all of Clara's favorite things. They ate in silence, both lost in thought. At 9 o'clock, the women Martha had hired to help Clara get ready arrived. Makeup, hair, dress. Each step brought her closer to the farce she was about to live. When she looked at herself in the mirror ready to leave, Clara did not recognize herself. The woman in the reflection looked like a doll, perfect and lifeless. "You look beautiful," Eleanor said, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you for everything, Mother. Even though I know I disagree with your choices, I understand why you made them." The car that would take Clara to the church arrived promptly at noon. It was a black Mercedes, driven by a uniformed chauffeur. Martha had thought of every detail to create the impression of a high-class wedding. The church was full of people Clara did not know. Guests of the Sterlings, curious neighbors, some people from town. On the Harrison family's side, only Eleanor, Mrs. Gable, and 3 close neighbors. When Clara entered the church holding Eleanor's arm, everyone turned to admire the bride. She walked down the central aisle with firm steps, but feeling as if she were walking to her own sacrifice. Grant was waiting for her at the altar, elegant in his black suit. When their eyes met, Clara saw in them the same mixture of determination and fear she felt. The priest began the ceremony with the traditional words about marriage as a sacred union blessed by God. Clara heard the words as if they came from far away, focusing on breathing and maintaining her smile. Grant Sterling, do you take Clara Harrison to be your lawful wife, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer? Until death do you part? I do. Clara Harrison, do you take Grant Sterling to be your lawful husband, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer? Until death do you part? Clara hesitated for a second that felt like an eternity. She looked at Martha, who watched her with attentive eyes. She looked at Eleanor, who was holding back tears. She looked at Grant, who awaited her answer with a neutral expression. I do. Then, by the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The groom may kiss the bride. Grant approached slowly. The kiss was brief and chaste, more a formal greeting than a show of affection. But when they parted, Clara felt something different in his gaze, a tenderness she hadn't expected. The reception took place in the church hall, with live music and plentiful food. Clara danced the traditional waltz with Grant, feigning joy for the photos Martha was insistent on capturing. How are you feeling? Grant asked quietly as they danced. As if I'm not myself, Clara answered honestly. It will get easier, he promised. Are you sure? Grant didn't answer because he wasn't sure of anything. The reception ended in the early evening. Clara said goodbye to her mother with a tight hug, knowing that from that moment her life would take a completely new direction. Take care, my daughter, Eleanor whispered, and remember, you will always have a home here. Clara followed Grant to the Mercedes, which would take them to his farm. During the 2-hour journey, they barely spoke. Clara looked out the window, watching the familiar landscape of her childhood recede. The New Heights estate, the Sterling family property, was impressive. A large 2-story house, well-kept stables, green pastures stretching as far as the eye could see. Clara had never seen so much prosperity gathered in one place. It's big, she commented as they got out of the car. 3 generations of the family worked to build all this, Grant explained. My great-grandmother started with just a few acres. Martha was waiting for them on the porch, accompanied by 2 uniformed maids. Welcome to your home, she announced dramatically. Clara, these are Mary and Betty. They will help you adjust to the household routine. Clara greeted the women, who seemed friendly, but were clearly instructed to report everything to Martha. I'll show Clara her room, Martha continued. Grant, I need to speak with you about the contracts that arrived today. Clara followed Martha into the house, impressed by the luxurious decor. Antique furniture, expensive paintings, Persian rugs, everything screamed money and tradition. This will be your room. Martha opened a door on the 2nd floor. The room was enormous and well decorated, but Clara immediately noticed there was only a single bed and no sign of masculine presence. And Grant's room? She asked, confused. Grant sleeps in his room across the hall. You are newlyweds, but that doesn't mean you need to share everything immediately, does it? Clara felt a mix of relief and strangeness. Was Martha making the charade easier, or was there something more behind that separation? Mary will bring your things. Dinner is at 7 sharp. We are not late in this house. Alone in the room, Clara sat on the bed and tried to process her new reality. She was married, living in a mansion with a man she barely knew, and under the constant supervision of her controlling mother-in-law. At 7 sharp, she went down for dinner. The dining room could easily seat 20 people, but only 3 places were set at the head of the enormous table. Punctual, excellent, Martha approved. Clara, you will sit there. Grant always sits to my right. Dinner was served by Mary, who offered elaborate dishes Clara had never tasted. She tried to eat politely but had no appetite. "Tomorrow morning you will see the rest of the property," Martha announced, "and we will talk about your responsibilities as the wife of the future heir." "Responsibilities?" Clara asked. "Of course, dear. Managing the house, supervising the maids, representing the family at social events. A Sterling has duties to fulfill." Clara looked at Grant, who was eating in silence. He seemed as much a prisoner in that situation as she was. "I will also teach you how to dress appropriately for our social position," Martha continued. "Those simple dresses you wear are not fitting for your new status." Clara felt her indignation rise but controlled herself. "Of course, Mrs. Martha. I am grateful for your guidance." After dinner, Grant accompanied her to her room. "Sorry about my mother," he said when they were in the hallway. "She is intense." "Intense is a kind way of saying controlling," Clara replied. "She'll get used to you, she just needs time." "And me? Will I get used to all this?" Grant stopped at her bedroom door. "I hope so, because I don't know how long our charade will need to last." Clara entered the room and locked the door, finally allowing the tears to fall. She had traded the freedom and simplicity of her mother's farm for the golden prison of the Sterling mansion. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Clara stayed awake, listening to the strange sounds of the new house. Footsteps in the hallway, doors closing, the ticking of an old clock. Everything contributed to the feeling of displacement. In the room next door, Grant also couldn't sleep. The guilt of dragging an innocent young woman into his complicated family situation weighed on his conscience, but he saw no alternative that could save everyone. In the days that followed, Clara tried to adapt to the mansion's routine. Martha would wake her early for etiquette lessons, teaching her how to behave at formal dinners, how to receive important visitors, how to dress for different occasions. "A Sterling never leaves the house without being impeccably dressed," Martha constantly repeated. "Our reputation in society depends on it." Clara learned that the Sterling family was one of the most traditional in the region, with businesses that included cattle ranching, soybean farming, and even some stores in the city. Grant was being prepared to take over all these ventures. "When I'm gone," Martha would say without embarrassment, "Grant and you will be responsible for maintaining our social standing. This includes contributions to the church, participation in charity events, and proper relations with other important families." Clara listened to it all with forced patience, but inside she felt increasingly suffocated. She had traded one problem for an even bigger one. At the end of the first week of marriage, Grant finally managed to speak with the neighbor, Arthur Brooks. The conversation confirmed his suspicions about the bank fraud. "Mr. Vance charged me for fees I never agreed to," Arthur admitted, "but I'm afraid to report him. What if he makes things even worse for my family?" "If we do nothing, he'll keep stealing from other people," Grant argued. "You're right, but I need assurances that my family will be protected." Grant promised to investigate further before taking any action. That night, he told Clara everything during one of the few moments they managed to talk alone. "So our suspicions were right," Clara said, feeling a mix of relief and indignation. "Yes, but I still need more evidence to file an official report." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. They were in the house's library, one of the few places where Martha didn't constantly interrupt them. Clara had discovered it was her favorite refuge in the mansion. "And if we get the evidence?" Clara asked. "What does that change for us?" "If we can nullify your mother's debts, you can file for divorce. You'll have legal grounds to claim the marriage was based on a fraudulent situation." Clara felt her heart race. The possibility of freedom seemed almost impossible after weeks of living like a prisoner in the mansion. "And you? Will you be able to resolve your financial problems another way?" Grant hesitated. "I'm still working on that." Clara realized he wasn't telling the whole truth, but she didn't press. Each had their own secrets and survival strategies. In the second week of marriage, Martha announced they would be receiving important visitors over the weekend. "The Sinclairs are coming for dinner on Saturday," she informed them during breakfast. "They are our partners in 2 business ventures. Clara, you will need to be perfect." Of course, Mrs. Martha. And Grant, I expect you and Clara to appear as a happy and united couple. The Sinclairs are conservative people who value family stability. Clara exchanged a look with Grant, another performance to sustain the farce. On Saturday, Clara wore a navy blue dress that Martha had bought especially for the occasion. The Sinclair couple arrived promptly at 7, accompanied by their 2 adult children. "Clara, my dear Mrs. Evelyn Sinclair greeted her warmly. "Martha has told me so much about you, a true young lady from a traditional family." Clara smiled and thanked her, feeling like an actress in a real-life play. Throughout the dinner, she and Grant played their roles of newlyweds in love with theatrical precision. "Do you plan to have children soon?" Mrs. Evelyn asked directly. Clara nearly choked on her wine. "Well, we're leaving it in God's hands." "What a wise answer," Martha interjected. "But we hope it won't be too long. This house needs children." After dinner, while the men talked business in the living room, the women gathered on the porch to discuss feminine matters. "Clara," Mrs. Evelyn approached, lowering her voice, "may I offer some advice from an experienced woman?" "Of course, Mrs. Evelyn. Martha is a wonderful woman, but she can be a bit possessive of Grant. Don't let that interfere with your marriage." Clara was taken aback by the remark. "What do you mean?" "She never approved of any girlfriend Grant had before you. She always found flaws in all of them. You were the first one she personally chose." Clara felt a chill. Martha hadn't just approved of the arranged marriage, she had orchestrated the whole thing. "Thank you for the advice, Mrs. Evelyn. And one more thing," Evelyn continued. "If you need anything, you can come to me. Sometimes a married woman needs support from other women." That conversation left Clara even more unsettled. It was becoming clear her situation was more complex than she had initially imagined. That night, when she finally managed to speak with Grant alone, Clara told him about the conversation with Mrs. Evelyn. "Did your mother choose our family on purpose?" she asked. Grant sighed heavily. "Clara, there are things about my mother I haven't told you." "What things?" "She's not just controlling, she's manipulative, and she has a history of eliminating people she considers obstacles." Clara felt her blood run cold. "Eliminating how?" "Not physically," Grant hurried to clarify, "but socially, financially. She has destroyed the reputations of people who opposed her." "And you never told me this because I'm afraid of what she might do if she discovers our charade." Clara felt betrayed again. "So, you brought me into a situation even more dangerous than I imagined." "I had no choice, and you didn't have any real alternatives either. But I could have made an informed decision if I knew all the risks." The argument was interrupted by Martha's voice calling Grant from downstairs. They parted without resolving the conflict, leaving Clara even more distressed. In the 3rd week of marriage, Clara decided to investigate on her own. She began paying closer attention to Martha's phone conversations and the papers she left on the office desk. That's how she discovered something shocking. Martha kept a detailed dossier on the Harrison family, information about their debts, their financial situation, even details about Clara and Eleanor's personalities. "She's been studying us for months," Clara whispered to herself, flipping through the papers carefully. There were also correspondences with other farmers in the region, all in difficult financial situations. Martha was building a network of arranged marriages, always favoring the Sterling family's interests. Clara photographed the most important documents with her phone and kept them as evidence. If she ever needed to defend herself, she would have proof of the manipulation. That afternoon, while Martha was visiting a friend in the city, Clara took the opportunity to explore the house further. In Martha's private office, she found an open safe containing even more compromising documents. Among the papers was a purchase contract for the Harrison farm. Martha had already secretly negotiated the purchase of Clara's family property, planning to incorporate it into the Sterling lands. "My God," Clara murmured, reading the details. "She wants our land. The marriage is just a way to get it legally." The discovery completely changed her perspective on the situation. This wasn't just an arranged marriage to settle debts. It was a calculated plan of land appropriation. When Grant came home that night, Clara confronted him with her discoveries. Your mother wants to steal my family's farm. What are you talking about? Clara showed him the photos of the documents. Grant turned pale upon seeing the contracts. Clara, I swear I didn't know about this. How could you not know? You live in the same house as her. My mother never tells me her plans completely. She always says it's for my own good. Your own good? She's using you to steal land from desperate families. Grant sat down heavily in a chair. What else did you find? Clara showed all the photographs, the dossiers on other families, the purchase contracts, even correspondence with lawyers specializing in rural land appropriation. She's building an empire at the expense of others' misfortune, Clara concluded. What are we going to do? We're going to stop her. But first I need to warn my mother. Grant agreed. For the first time since the wedding, they were truly united against a common enemy. The next morning, Clara called her mother and asked her to come urgently to the Sterling farm, making up an excuse about wanting to show her new house. Eleanor arrived at noon, curious and a bit worried about the urgency of the invitation. Clara greeted her alone, as Martha had gone to take care of business in the city, and Grant was supervising work in the pastures. Clara, are you all right? You look worried, Eleanor observed as soon as they sat on the porch. Mum, I need to tell you something very serious about Mrs. Martha and the marriage. Clara revealed the whole truth, the sham marriage, the discoveries about the bank fraud, and especially Martha's plan to take over the Harrison farm. Eleanor listened to everything in growing silence, her face going through various expressions of shock, indignation, and fear. You mean I handed my daughter over to a criminal? Eleanor finally managed to say. You didn't know, Mum. Martha deceived all of us. But how can we prove all this? Clara showed the photographs of the documents. Eleanor examined each one carefully, her indignation growing with each revelation. That woman planned everything down to the smallest detail, Eleanor murmured, and I walked right into the trap. What's important now is to decide how we're going to respond. Let's report her to the police. Mom, it's not that simple. Martha has a lot of power and influence in the region. If we report her without solid evidence, she could turn against us with full force. Eleanor stood up and began pacing back and forth on the porch. Then what do you suggest we do? First, we'll gather more evidence. Second, we'll find other victims willing to testify. And third, we'll plan a safe way out of this situation. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Martha, who returned earlier than expected. Clara quickly put away her phone and forced a smile. Mrs. Eleanor, what a joy to see you here, Martha greeted politely, but Clara noticed a suspicious glint in her eyes. I came to see the house where my daughter is living, Eleanor replied, trying to sound natural. Of course, Clara, why don't you show our property to your mother? We were just chatting a bit first, Clara explained. Chatting about what? The question sounded more like an interrogation than casual interest. Clara sensed danger in the air. About how I'm adapting to my new life, Clara answered carefully. That's good. And how are you feeling, Eleanor? It must be hard being alone at the farm. Eleanor swallowed hard. I'm managing. I'm sure you are. By the way, I wanted to talk to you about some matters related to your property. How about we have some coffee? Clara wanted to protest, but she couldn't do so without raising suspicion. She watched nervously as Martha led her mother inside the house. During the coffee, which lasted almost 2 hours, Clara stayed on the porch trying to catch fragments of the conversation. She could hear Martha's controlling voice and Eleanor's increasingly nervous replies. When they finally came out of the room, Eleanor was visibly shaken. Martha, on the other hand, looked satisfied. It was a pleasure talking with you, Eleanor. I hope our conversation clarified some important matters. After Eleanor left, Clara tried to speak with Martha about what they had discussed, but her mother-in-law was evasive. Just family matters, dear. Nothing a newlywed should worry about. That night, Clara called her mother to find out what had happened during their private conversation. Clara, Eleanor's voice was trembling. She knows. Knows what? She knows you discovered her plans. She asked very specific questions about our conversation today, and she made me an offer. Clara felt her heart race. What kind of offer? She wants to buy our farm for a pittance, said it's the only way to ensure you stay married and happy. Did she threaten you? Not directly, but she made it clear that if I don't accept the offer, she could create problems for you and our family. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the net closing in around them. What did you say? I said I needed to think, but she gave me a deadline until tomorrow. Mother, don't accept that offer. What if she follows through on the threats? I can't risk your safety. Trust me, I have a plan, but I need one more day. After hanging up, Clara stayed awake all night planning. She needed to act fast before Martha took more drastic measures. The next morning, while Martha was on the phone handling business, Clara took the opportunity to speak with Grant about the urgency of the situation. My mother is being blackmailed. Martha found out we know about her plans. How did she find out? I don't know, but now we know she's even more dangerous than we imagined. Grant ran his hands through his hair, clearly stressed. Clara, I think it's time for you to leave. What do you mean? Get out of this house. Go back to your mother. I'll try to hold my mother off while you seek legal help. And you? What will happen to you? Don't worry about me. I can take care of myself. Clara stared at him for a long moment. During those weeks living together, she had developed a genuine fondness for Grant. Seeing him willing to sacrifice himself for her safety moved her deeply. I won't leave you alone with her. Clara, be rational. You owe me nothing. Maybe I don't owe you, but I care about you. The confession came out before Clara could stop herself. Grant looked at her surprised. Clara, I know it started as a farce, but you've become important to me. I couldn't live with myself knowing I abandoned you in a dangerous situation. Grant stepped closer and took her hands. You've become important to me too, more than you should have. They stared at each other for a moment, charged with tension and confused feelings. The desperate situation had created a bond between them that transcended the original farce. Then let's face this together, Clara decided. How? I'll call that lawyer I consulted before the wedding. I'll tell him the whole truth and hand over the evidence we have. If we can get a legal injunction against Martha, she won't be able to threaten us anymore. And if it doesn't work, at least we tried. And if we need to run later, we'll run together. Grant squeezed her hands. You're right. Let's fight. Clara called Dr. Miller in the city and urgently explained the entire situation. The lawyer listened carefully and asked her to bring all the evidence in person. If what you're telling me is true, we have a serious case of fraud, coercion and conspiracy, he explained. But I need to examine the documents personally before taking any action. Clara arranged to meet him that same afternoon in the city. She made up an excuse for Martha about needing to buy undergarments and left with Grant. In the lawyer's office, Dr. Miller examined all the photographs and documents Clara had collected. His expression grew increasingly serious as he analyzed the evidence. This is very grave, he concluded. Martha Sterling set up a sophisticated scheme for appropriating rural land, and from what I see here, your family wasn't the first victim. Can you do anything? I can, but it will be dangerous. Martha has a lot of power in the region. If she finds out you came to me, she already knows we've discovered part of her plans, Grant explained. The situation is already dangerous. Dr. Miller thought for a few minutes. I'll prepare a formal complaint for the district attorney's office, but you need to stay safe in the meantime. Martha may try to intimidate witnesses. What do you suggest? Clara should return to her mother's house immediately. And Grant, you need to pretend you know nothing. No, Clara protested. I won't abandon Grant. Clara, be sensible. If you both disappear at the same time, Martha will know you're acting together against her. Grant agreed with the lawyer. He's right. You need to leave my mother's house today. But, please, Grant interrupted her. Do this for me. I'll feel better knowing you're safe. Clara reluctantly agreed, but demanded that Grant promise to contact her daily. On the way back to the farm, they agreed on the official story. Clara had decided to visit her mother for a few days because she missed her. What if she doesn't accept it? Clara asked. She will, Grant assured. She'd rather you leave voluntarily than have to force you out. When they arrived at the farm, Martha was waiting on the porch with an unyielding expression. "How was the shopping?" she asked, but without showing real interest. "Fine," Clara replied. "Actually, I took the chance to decide something. I'd like to visit my mother for a few days." Martha showed no surprise. "I thought you might ask that." "May I?" "Of course, dear. How long do you plan to stay?" "A week, maybe 2. "No problem. Grant can take you early tomorrow." The ease with which Martha accepted Clara's departure was almost frightening. It was as if she had been expecting exactly that. That night, Clara packed quickly, putting only the essentials in a small bag. She didn't want to give the impression she was running away for good. During dinner, Martha was unusually cordial, talking about plans for when Clara returned from her visit. "Perhaps we can redecorate your room while you're away," she suggested. "Make it more to your taste." Clara politely agreed, but inside she felt Martha was planning something. The woman was too smart not to suspect Clara's true intentions. The next morning, Grant took Clara back to her mother's farm. During the trip, they talked about the next steps. "I'll try to find out more information about my mother's other schemes," Grant promised. "The more evidence we have, the better. Be careful not to expose yourself too much." "I'll be careful, and you don't leave the house alone. If my mother sends someone to watch you, it's better to always be accompanied." When they arrived at the Harrison farm, Eleanor greeted them with evident relief. "Thank God you're all right," she said, hugging Clara tightly. "How are things here?" Clara asked. "Last night 2 men showed up here asking for you. They said they were acquaintances of the Sterling family." Clara and Grant exchanged worried looks. "What kind of questions did they ask?" "They wanted to know if you were happy in the marriage, if you had mentioned anything about problems with Mrs. Martha. I thought it was very strange." "What did you tell them?" "That you were well and happy, of course." "But I was scared." Grant said goodbye quickly, promising to return as soon as possible. Before leaving, he whispered in Clara's ear, "My mother is already acting. You need to be very careful." After Grant left, Clara told her mother about the lawyer and the legal measures being taken. "How long will it take?" Eleanor asked. "Dr. Miller said a few weeks, but it's possible Mrs. Martha might try something before that." As if it were a premonition, that very afternoon they received a visit from a court officer bringing a legal notification. "Mrs. Eleanor Harrison?" the man asked formally. "That's me. I have here a debt enforcement notification. You have 72 hours to settle the outstanding debt of $320,000, or the property will be seized." Eleanor turned pale. "But how?" "The bank said the debts had been settled by my daughter's marriage." According to the documents, there was an error in processing the payment. The debt remains outstanding with accrued interest. Clara took the papers and examined them quickly. It was a new blow from Mrs. Martha, using her influence to reactivate debts that were supposedly settled. "This is impossible," Clara protested. "We have documents proving the payment. You can contest it in court, but in the meantime, the enforcement will follow its normal course." After the officer left, Clara and Eleanor sat in the kitchen in a state of shock. "She's forcing us to accept the offer to buy the farm," Clara concluded. "If we don't sell for a pittance, we'll lose everything in the enforcement." "What do we do?" Clara picked up the phone. "I'll call Dr. Miller. This changes everything." The lawyer answered quickly and listened to the new situation with growing concern. "Mrs. Martha is accelerating her attacks," he analyzed. "She wants to force a solution before our complaint is processed." "Can we do anything to stop the enforcement?" "I can file for an injunction, but it will be hard to get it granted within 72 hours. So we're lost." "Not yet, but you need to prepare for extreme scenarios." "What kind of scenarios?" "Mrs. Martha might be planning more than just taking your farm. If she's willing to use coercion and fraudulent documents, we don't know how far she might go." Clara felt a chill. "Are you saying we could be in physical danger?" "I'm saying to be very careful, and if possible, don't be alone at the farm." After hanging up, Clara explained the gravity of the situation to her mother. "We'll call Mrs. Gable and other neighbors," Eleanor decided. "If we're always accompanied, it will be harder for Mrs. Martha to try anything." That night, Mrs. Gable and 2 other neighbors came to sleep at the Harrison farm. Clara had made up an excuse about a fear of thieves, but in truth she was genuinely worried about possible threats. During the night, they were awakened by the sound of engines in the yard. Clara looked out the window and saw 2 dark cars parked near the house. "Mother, wake up," she whispered urgently. "There are people outside." Eleanor got up quickly, and they woke the neighbors. Outside, they could hear male voices talking in low tones. "I'll call the police," Eleanor whispered, picking up the phone. "Wait," Clara stopped her. "If we call the police without knowing who these men are, it might seem like paranoia, and Mrs. Martha could use that against us. Then what do? We stay quiet and wait for them to leave." The men stayed in the yard for almost an hour, apparently watching the house. Finally, the engines rumbled again, and the cars drove away. "Who do you think they were?" Mrs. Gable asked, clearly frightened. "I don't know," Clara lied, "but tomorrow we'll take steps to improve security." The next morning, Clara called Grant to tell him about the nighttime visitors. "It was my mother," he confirmed her suspicions. "She's trying to intimidate you into accepting the purchase offer." "How do you know?" "Because she left very early today and came back talking about having resolved a neighborhood problem." "Grant, I'm scared. I don't know how far she might go." "Clara, I think you and your mother should leave town for a few days, at least until Dr. Miller can file the complaint." "Go where?" "I have a cousin in Asheville. She can host you without asking questions." Clara hesitated. Running away felt like a defeat, but staying could be dangerous. "I need to talk to my mother." Eleanor initially resisted the idea of leaving the farm, but the events of the previous night had frightened her. "If we stay, we risk being forced to sign the farm sale out of intimidation," Clara explained. "If we leave, we buy time for the lawyer to work. And what if we lose the farm to foreclosure while we're away? Dr. Miller said he'll try for a restraining order. It's our only chance." Eleanor agreed reluctantly. They packed quickly and asked Mrs. Gable to look after the animals for a few days. Grant came to pick them up in the mid-afternoon, driving a different car to avoid drawing attention. "My cousin Sarah is expecting you," he explained during the trip. "She knows it's a delicate situation but doesn't know the details." "How long can we stay there?" Eleanor asked. "As long as you need. Sarah runs a small inn and always has rooms available." During the trip, Clara noticed Grant was more tense than usual. "Did something happen?" she asked. "My mother is suspicious. She asked several times where you were and when you'd be back." "What did you tell her?" "That you were visiting your mother and would return when you felt ready. And she accepted that. For now. But I feel she's planning something." Asheville was a 2-hour drive away. Sarah's inn was simple but cozy, located on a quiet street in the town center. Sarah Sterling was a woman in her early 40s, divorced and independent. She welcomed Clara and Eleanor with genuine kindness. "Grant told me you need a quiet place to rest," she said, showing them the rooms. "You can stay as long as you like." "Thank you so much for having us," Eleanor said gratefully. "Not at all. Family is family, even if it's by marriage." After settling their luggage, Clara spoke privately with Grant before he returned home. "How will we communicate?" she asked. "I'll call every night at the agreed time. If I don't call, it means something has happened. And if Martha finds out where we are, Sarah knows how to take care of herself, and you're registered here under false names just to be safe." Clara felt safer but still worried about Grant. "Promise you'll be careful?" "I promise. And you promise you won't do anything risky while you're here?" "I promise." They said goodbye with a hug that lasted longer than necessary. Clara was discovering that her feelings for Grant were deeper than she had admitted to herself. In the following days, Clara and Eleanor tried to maintain a normal routine at the inn. They went out to explore the town, talked with other guests, trying to temporarily forget their problems. Dr. Miller called daily with updates on the legal proceedings. He had obtained a restraining order that temporarily suspended the debt foreclosure, but Martha had hired expensive lawyers who were contesting everything. "It's a legal battle that could last months," he explained in one of the calls, "but at least you won't lose the farm immediately." Grant also called religiously every day at 9 in the evening. His news was increasingly worrying. "My mother hired a private investigator to find you," he shared in one of the calls. "Do you think she'll succeed?" "Eventually, yes. She has resources and determination. So what do we do? Keep changing your routine. Don't always leave at the same times. Don't frequent the same places 2 days in a row. Clara was growing increasingly anxious with the constant fleeing. She felt like a criminal when in fact they were the victims. 1 week after arriving at the inn, Sarah sought them out with unsettling news. "Girls, a man was here today asking about 2 women matching your description." Clara felt her stomach turn to ice. "What did you tell him?" "That there was no one fitting that profile staying here." But he didn't seem convinced. "What did this man look like?" "About 50, well-dressed, had a card from an investigation company." Clara immediately called Grant to warn him about the investigators' visit. "They got here faster than I expected," he said, clearly worried. "You need to leave there today." "To where?" "I'll pick you up in 2 hours. I have another place in mind." Grant arrived punctually and took them to an even smaller town where a friend of his had a remote farm. Clara was beginning to feel like a professional fugitive. The new property was isolated, surrounded by coffee plantations. The owner, Sebastian, was a simple man who asked few questions and offered accommodation in an empty tenant house. "Here you can stay undisturbed," Sebastian assured. "I don't get visitors, and my workers are trustworthy." Clara thanked him, but felt the situation was spiraling out of control. She was living like a refugee because of Martha's crimes. "This can't go on forever," she said to Grant when they were alone. "I know, but we need to buy time for the legal process to advance. And if the process doesn't resolve anything, are we going to be on the run for the rest of our lives?" Grant had no answer for that question, because he also didn't know how the situation would be resolved. That night, alone in the room of the tenant house, Clara made a difficult decision. She called Dr. Miller and proposed a change of strategy. "I want to make a deal with Martha," she announced. "What do you mean?" "I'll go back to her estate and pretend I accept the situation. In return, she stops pursuing my mother. Clara, that's very dangerous. More dangerous than living on the run forever. If you go back there, Martha could force you to sign documents or do things you don't want to. Then you'll have to speed up the case against her. How long do you need to have something concrete?" Dr. Miller hesitated. "If I have witnesses willing to speak publicly, maybe 2 weeks. Then give me 2 weeks. I'll go back to Martha's house and try to extract more confessions from her. It's very risky, Clara. It's the only way to end this once and for all." When she told the plan to Grant and Eleanor the next morning, both vehemently opposed it. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself like that," Grant protested. "My daughter, that woman is too dangerous," Eleanor added. "And what do you suggest? That we keep running until Martha gives up? She'll never give up." Clara was determined. She had reached her limit of patience with the victim situation. "If you're set on doing this," Grant said finally, "at least let me help. I'll arrange a way to record the conversations she has with you." "How?" "A hidden recorder. If we can record Martha admitting to the crimes, the lawyer will have irrefutable evidence. Dr. Miller, when he learned of the plan, still tried to dissuade her, but ended up agreeing to provide a small professional recorder. Clara, if at any point you feel in real danger, forget the recorder and get out of there," he instructed. "No evidence is worth your safety. I understand. And remember, Martha is clever. If she suspects she's being recorded, it could become very dangerous." Clara nodded, but she was determined to follow the plan. It was the only way to get her life back and protect her mother. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The next day, Clara returned alone to the Sterling family farm. She had arranged with Grant that he would arrive a few hours later, pretending not to know she had returned. Martha greeted her on the porch with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Clara, dear, what a pleasant surprise. We didn't expect you back so soon." "I missed home," Clara lied naturally. "And Grant, of course." "Of course. And how is your mother?" "Well, better, actually, after she spoke with you about the farm." Clara saw a glint of satisfaction in Martha's eyes. "Oh yes, our conversation was very productive. Your mother is a sensible woman." "Why do you say that?" because she understood that sometimes we need to make difficult decisions for the good of the family. Clara forced a smile as the recorder hidden in her bra captured every word. You're right. Family should always come first. Exactly. And speaking of which, I have some news to share with you. Martha led her to the house's office, closing the door behind them. Clara felt a twinge of nervousness. What kind of news? Your mother made a wise decision about the farm. She decided to sell it to us. Clara feigned surprise. Sold it? When? Yesterday. The papers are already signed. Your family is now officially part of the Sterling businesses. That's unexpected. Clara, I know you must be confused, but your mother understood it was the best solution for everyone. Her farm was having a lot of financial problems. What kind of problems? Martha walked over to the desk and picked up some documents. Debts she didn't even know existed. It seems your late father made some deals that were never revealed to the family. Clara knew that was a lie, but continued to play naive. What kind of deals? High-interest loans, poorly documented business partnerships, things like that. When we started investigating the financial situation to help you, we discovered liabilities much greater than we imagined. And you decided to buy the farm, even with these problems? We're family now, Clara. I couldn't let you face this alone. Martha's cynicism was impressive. She was recounting her own crimes as if they were acts of generosity. I'm very grateful, Mrs. Martha. And there's more news. With the unification of the properties, Grant will have even more responsibilities in the family business. This means you two will need to move to the main wing of the house. Clara went on alert. Main wing? The master bedroom that belonged to Grant's parents. I've already had your things moved there. But Grant and I are still adjusting to the marriage. Maybe it's too soon for us to share a room. Nonsense. You've been husband and wife for almost a month. It's time you started acting like it. Clara realized this was just another form of control. Martha wanted her and Grant in a room where she could monitor them more easily. Of course, Mrs. Martha, if you think it's best. I do. And there's one last piece of news, perhaps the most important of all. Clara felt her heart race. What is it? Martha stood up and went to the safe, from which she pulled a thick folder of documents. I am officially transferring the entire administration of the family businesses to Grant. He will be the new person in charge of everything, the farms, the stores, the investments. That's a huge responsibility. It is. And as his wife, you will also have important responsibilities. Most importantly, ensure he continues making the right decisions for the family. Clara didn't like the threatening tone in Martha's voice. What do you mean? Grant has always been far too independent a young man. He needs a wife who will keep him focused on the Sterling family's interests. I understand. I hope you truly do, Clara. Because if Grant starts making wrong decisions, the one who will pay the price will be your mother. The threat was direct and clear. Clara understood that Eleanor would be held hostage by her and Grant's behavior. My mother? Why would she pay any price? Because her farm is now ours, and if there are family disagreements, she might lose the right to continue living there. Clara clenched her fists, but maintained her composure. There will be no disagreements, Mrs. Martha. Grant and I just want to be a happy family. That's good to hear. I'm sure you will be very happy together. The conversation was interrupted by Grant's arrival, who entered the house calling for Clara. Ah, he's here, Martha smiled. How about we give him the good news? Grant entered the study and feigned surprise upon seeing Clara. Clara, I didn't know you were back. I wanted to surprise you, she replied, going to him for a kiss on the cheek. What a wonderful coincidence, Martha observed. I was just telling Clara about the changes I've made to the family businesses. Grant looked from Clara to his mother, trying to assess the situation. What changes? I've transferred all management to you. As of today, you are officially the head of the Sterling family. Grant couldn't hide his surprise. Mother, I don't understand. Why this sudden decision? Because the time has come. You have a wife now, the responsibilities of a married man. You need to take your place in the family. Clara realized this was another one of Martha's traps, By officially transferring the businesses to Grant, she was creating a situation where any rebellion from him would result in the loss of everything the family had built. "This is a great responsibility," Grant said carefully. "I'm sure you and Clara will know how to honor the family tradition," Martha replied, emphasizing the words threateningly. That night, Clara and Grant met in the marital bedroom Martha had prepared for them. It was a luxurious setting, but Clara felt like she was in a gilded prison. "Did you manage to record anything useful?" Grant asked in a low voice. "Several confessions. She admitted to manipulating my mother's debts and basically confessed to the land appropriation scheme." "That's great. But there's a problem. She made it clear that my mother will be a hostage to our behavior. If we try to expose her, she'll take revenge on her." Grant ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "My mother always manages to create no-win situations. And now? How do we proceed?" "I need to think. She officially transferred all the businesses to me, but I'm sure there's some trick hidden." Clara showed him the documents Martha had given. Grant examined them carefully, looking for suspicious clauses. "Here," he pointed to a line at the end of the contract. "If I am deemed incapable of properly managing the family businesses, control automatically reverts to her. And who determines if you're incapable? A committee formed by 3 of my mother's business partners, all loyal to her." Clara understood the trap. "So you're only the head as long as you do exactly what she wants." "Exactly. And probably, if we try to expose her, she'll declare me incapable and take back control of everything." They were silent for a few minutes, trying to find a way out of the seemingly impossible situation. "Grant," Clara finally said, "I think we need outside help. Someone Martha can't control or intimidate." "Who are you thinking of?" "In the press. If we can get an investigative journalist to publish the story, Martha won't be able to cover everything up with money and influence. It's risky. If the article is poorly done, it might just look like a family feud. Then we have to make sure it's done well, with all the necessary evidence and witnesses." Grant thought about the proposal. "I know a journalist in New York City who investigates corruption in rural areas. Maybe he'd be interested in the story. Can we trust him? He's serious and has no connections in our region. It would be hard for my mother to influence him." "Then let's try." Clara called Dr. Miller to tell him about the new developments and the idea of involving the press. "It's an interesting strategy," he admitted. "If we get media coverage, the district attorney's office will be pressured to speed up the process. And the risks? Martha could try to take legal action against you for defamation. But if we have solid evidence, she won't succeed. And my mother, will she be safe? If the story gains public attention, it will be difficult for Martha to retaliate against your mother without drawing even more attention to herself." Clara decided to go ahead with the plan. Grant contacted the journalist, Scott, who was immediately interested in the story. "Land-grabbing schemes are more common than people think," Scott explained in a phone call. "If you have solid evidence, I can do a full investigation." "What kind of evidence do you need? Documents, recordings, witnesses, and most importantly, other victims willing to speak publicly?" "We can arrange all of that." "Then let's meet, but it will take me a few weeks to do a thorough investigation." Clara felt a mix of hope and apprehension. Finally, there was a real possibility of exposing Martha, but the time needed to prepare the article would be crucial to maintaining their cover. In the following days, Clara and Grant had to play the part of a happy couple under Martha's constant scrutiny. During the day, Clara accompanied her mother-in-law on visits to other properties in the region, always alert for new evidence of the crimes. On one of these visits, she met Mrs. Abigail, a 65-year-old widow who was going through a situation similar to what Eleanor had faced. "My late husband left some debts," Abigail told Martha. "The bank is charging fees I don't really understand." "What kind of fees?" Martha asked with evident interest. "Late interest, administrative charges, insurance policies I don't remember signing up for." Clara watched Martha ask the same questions she had asked about the Silver Farm situation. It was clear she was sizing up Abigail as a new potential victim. "Mrs. Abigail," Martha said compassionately, "if you need help sorting this out, you can count on our family. We have experience dealing with banking problems." Clara felt nauseous seeing Martha use the same predatory strategy she had used with her own family. That night, she called the journalist Scott to report the new situation. "Perfect," he said. "If we can catch Martha trying to pull the scam in real time, we'll have an even more impactful story. How do we do that?" "You can approach Mrs. Abigail and warn her about the scheme. If she agrees to cooperate, we can record the conversations with Martha." Clara liked the idea, but knew it would be risky. If Martha discovered she was sabotaging a new scam, the consequences would be severe. The next day, Clara found a way to visit Mrs. Abigail alone, using the excuse of bringing some leftover fruit from a lunch at the farm. "How kind of you, dear," Abigail welcomed her warmly. "Come in, let's have some coffee." During the conversation, Clara carefully steered the subject toward the widow's financial situation. "Mrs. Abigail, may I offer some advice about those banking problems you mentioned yesterday?" "Of course, dear. Be very careful with offers of help that seem too good to be true." Abigail looked at her curiously. "Why do you say that?" Clara hesitated. Telling the whole truth could be dangerous, but she couldn't stand by and watch another family be destroyed by Martha. "Because I've seen situations where well-meaning people ended up creating more problems than solutions." "Are you referring to Mrs. Martha?" "I can't go into details, but I suggest you consult an independent lawyer before accepting any proposals from third parties." Abigail studied Clara's face intently. "My dear, are you trying to warn me about some specific danger?" Clara made a risky decision. "Mrs. Abigail, if you promise absolute secrecy, I can tell you something important." "I promise." Clara recounted a summarized version of the situation her family had faced, without revealing details about the ongoing investigation. "My God," Abigail whispered. "So she was planning to do the same thing to me that she did to your family?" "It's very likely, that's why I'm here. I don't want another family to go through what we did." "What should I do?" "For now, just be cautious. Don't sign anything that Mrs. Martha proposes. And if possible, get a lawyer to analyze your actual debts." "Do you think my debts could also be fraudulent?" "It's possible. The same bank manager who created problems for my family may have done the same to you." Abigail fell silent for a few minutes, processing the information. "Clara, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "Are you truly happy in your marriage to Grant?" The question took Clara by surprise. "Why do you ask?" "Because yesterday, watching the two of you, I noticed something strange. You act like close friends, but not like husband and wife." Clara felt her blood run cold. If Abigail had noticed, other people might have too. "We're still getting to know each other," she replied evasively. "I see. And Grant, is he an accomplice in his mother's schemes?" "No," Clara answered with conviction. "He's as much a victim as anyone else." "What a complicated situation," Abigail murmured. "You both must be suffering a great deal." "We are. But we hope everything will be resolved soon." "Can I help in any way?" Clara thought quickly. Having Abigail as an ally could be useful, especially if Martha tried to pull the scam on her. "Actually, yes. If Mrs. Martha makes any proposal to help with your debts, could you pretend to be interested and let me know?" "Of course, but how would that help?" "I'd prefer not to go into details now, but it would be very important to prove some things about her methods." Abigail agreed, and Clara returned home feeling she had taken an important step in the investigation. That same evening, Martha announced she had scheduled a meeting with Abigail for the next day. "I'm going to offer to help sort out her financial problems," Martha said during dinner. "The poor thing is completely lost with those debts." Clara forced an approving expression. "How kind of you." "It's our duty to help neighbors in difficulty," Martha replied hypocritically. "May I accompany you to the meeting?" Clara asked. "I'd like to learn how to handle this type of situation." Martha hesitated for a moment but finally agreed. "Of course, it will be a good experience for you." Clara knew Martha wouldn't suspect anything if she were present during the meeting. It was the perfect opportunity to record the scam in real time. On the morning of the meeting, Clara quickly called Scott to tell him about the opportunity. "It's exactly what we need," he said. "Record everything. Even if the quality isn't perfect, it will be crucial evidence." The meeting took place at Abigail's house. Martha arrived with a folder full of documents and an expression of sincere concern. "Abigail, dear," she said, hugging the widow, "I came here to try to help you solve these terrible problems. Thank you so much, Martha. I'm truly desperate. First, tell me exactly what your situation is." Abigail explained her bank debts, mentioning amounts and deadlines. Clara watched Martha take careful notes, clearly calculating the profit potential. "Abigail," Martha said compassionately, "your situation is more serious than I imagined. The debts are too high for a property the size of yours." "What should I do?" "Well, there are a few options. The safest would be to sell part of the property to pay off the debts." "Sell to whom?" "Our family could make a generous offer. We buy the part you don't use much, and with that money, you solve your banking problems." Clara watched Martha apply exactly the same strategy she had used with Eleanor. The hidden recorder captured every word of the farce. "How much would you pay?" Abigail asked, following the script Clara had suggested. "Let me do a quick assessment," Martha pretended to calculate. "I'd say about $80,000 would be a fair price." Clara knew that amount was ridiculously low. Abigail's land was worth at least $300,000. "It seems low," Abigail said hesitantly. "Dear, you need to understand you're buying in an emergency situation, and there are legal costs, transfer fees, those sorts of things. In the end, it's a very honest price. But if I sell for that price, I'll be left with very little money to live on." "Don't worry about that," Martha smiled predatorily. "Our family will take care of you. You can continue living on the part of the property that remains, and if you need anything, just come to us." It was the same empty promise she had made to Eleanor. Clara felt growing indignation hearing Martha repeat her lies. "I need to think a little," Abigail said, as they had agreed. "Of course, dear. But don't take too long. Banking problems can get complicated quickly if not resolved. How long do I have to decide? I'd say a week would be ideal. After that, I might not be able to help under the same conditions." The psychological pressure was identical to that applied to the Harrison family. Martha had a refined method of manipulation that she used on all her victims. After the meeting, on the way back, Martha was visibly satisfied. "Abigail is a sensible woman," she commented. "I'm sure she'll make the right decision." "Do you think she'll accept the offer?" Clara asked, feigning innocent curiosity. "I'm almost certain. When people are desperate, they become much more reasonable." Clara was recording even that conversation. Martha was providing evidence of her predatory mindset without realizing it. "How can you assess property values so quickly?" Clara continued, fishing for confessions. "Experience, dear. After years in the rural real estate market, you develop a keen eye for opportunities. Opportunities. Properties in distress, families that need to sell quickly, situations where we can offer solutions that benefit everyone involved." The cynicism was staggering. Martha genuinely believed she was doing favors for her victims. That night, Clara sent all the recordings to Scott and Dr. Miller. The response from both was enthusiastic. "This is pure gold," Scott said. "Martha basically confessed to running a scam in real time." "When does the article come out?" Clara asked. "I need a few more days to verify some information and contact other victims, but I'd say we'll have something ready next week." Clara felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The publication of the article would change everything, but it would also make the final confrontation with Martha inevitable. "Scott, do you think the article will have enough impact to protect all the victims?" "If I do my job right, yes. I'm thinking of pitching it to a television program as well. This kind of story has great public appeal." "Perfect." During the following days, Clara had to continue the charade of the obedient daughter-in-law, while anxiously awaiting the article's publication. Martha was growing increasingly confident, treating Clara almost like an accomplice in her schemes. "Clara," she said one morning, "I'd like you to accompany me to more meetings. You have a way with people, and that would be useful for business." "It would be an honor, Mrs. Martha." "Great. I have a meeting tomorrow with another farmer who's facing difficulties. It will be a good opportunity for you to practice." Clara agreed, knowing it would be another chance to gather evidence. Martha was inadvertently providing material for her own downfall. On the day of the second meeting, Clara was better prepared with a higher quality recorder. The farmer in question was a 50-year-old man named Mr. Samuel, who had lost part of his crop in a thunderstorm. Martha repeated exactly the same script. She offered to buy part of the land for below market price, promised to take care of the family, and created psychological pressure for a quick decision. "Mr. Samuel," she said at the end of the meeting, "I know it's a difficult decision, but sometimes we need to be pragmatic. Your family needs financial stability, and our offer provides that." "That's true," Mr. Samuel replied. "But the price reflects the market reality for urgent sales. If you had months to look for other buyers, you might get a higher value. But you don't have that time, do you?" The manipulation was subtle and effective. Martha created a sense of urgency that forced hasty decisions. That same night, Scott called with important news. "Clara, the article is ready, and I got something even better. A television program wants to do a special report on land appropriation in rural areas. When will it air?" "The article comes out tomorrow in the newspaper. The TV program will be next week." Clara felt her stomach churn. "Tomorrow? So soon?" "Yes. And there's one more thing. Other newspapers have shown interest in the story. This could generate national attention. And our safety. Martha will be furious when she finds out. Dr. Miller has already filed a protective order for you and your mother, and the police have been informed about possible retaliation." Clara hung up the phone with trembling hands. After weeks of planning, the decisive moment had arrived. Grant noticed her agitation when she entered the bedroom. "Did something happen?" he asked. "The article comes out tomorrow." Grant turned pale. "Tomorrow? Are we ready for this?" "We have no choice." Scott said information about the story leaked, and he had to speed up publication. "What do we do?" "We leave the house very early and go to a safe place. When Martha finds out, we don't want to be within her reach. They spent the night planning their escape. They needed to leave the farm without raising suspicion, but before the article was published. At 5 in the morning, Clara and Grant slipped out of the house quietly, taking only the essentials. They left a note explaining they had gone to visit Eleanor for a few days. They drove straight to the city, where Dr. Miller was waiting for them in his office. "You made the right decision," he said. "The article is devastating for Martha. She won't be able to recover from this." "And now?" Clara asked. "Now we wait for the fallout, and we prepare for her counterattack." At 9 in the morning, the article was published online with the headline, "Farm Owner Uses Arranged Marriages to Steal Land in the Interior of São Paulo." Clara read the full report, impressed with the quality of Scott's investigation. He had managed to interview 3 families victimized by similar schemes, including documents and recordings that proved the fraud. "It's perfect," she said to Grant. "Scott managed to show this isn't an isolated case, but a systematic scheme." Grant was finishing reading the article when his phone began ringing insistently. It was Martha. "Are you going to answer?" Clara asked. "Better not. Let her think I have no signal." The phone rang more than 20 times before stopping. Then the text messages began, each one more furious than the last. "Grant, where are you? I saw the lying article about our family. Come home immediately. Clara has poisoned your mind against your own family. If you don't return today, I will take legal action." Dr. Miller analyzed the messages and made an important observation. "Notice how she doesn't deny the facts presented in the article. She's only attacking you personally." "Is that significant?" Clara asked. "Very. If Martha were truly innocent, she would be categorically denying the accusations. The fact she focuses on personal attacks suggests she knows the evidence is too solid to contest." For the rest of the day, the article gained traction on social media and in other news outlets. Scott called several times with updates about interest from the national media. 3 television networks want interviews with you," he reported, "and the state prosecutor's office has officially taken on the case." "Does that mean Martha will be officially investigated?" "Yes, and with all this attention, it will be very difficult for her to use political influence to bury the case." Clara felt a wave of relief. Finally, after months of fear and uncertainty, the truth was coming to light. That night, they checked into a hotel in the city, using false names as a precaution. Clara called her mother to tell her about the developments. Clara, my dear, Eleanor said, her voice full of emotion. I'm seeing the news on television. I can't believe that terrible woman will finally be punished. It's not over yet, Mom. Martha might try to get revenge before she's arrested. I'm well protected. Mrs. Gable and other neighbors are here with me, and the police stopped by today to check if everything was okay. Clara felt more at ease knowing her mother was safe. In a few days, when things calm down, we can return to a normal life. And you and Grant? Will you stay married? The question caught Clara off guard. Throughout the whole drama, she had been so focused on surviving that she hadn't thought about the future of their relationship. I don't know, Mom. Everything happened so fast. Clara, may I give an opinion? Of course. Watching you two through all of this, I see you've become a real team. You've faced together things that destroy many real marriages. Clara looked at Grant, who was across the room talking with Dr. Miller about legal matters. Over the last few months, he had become her partner, confidant and protector. Perhaps you're right, Clara admitted. Talk about it when everything settles. You deserve the chance to choose your own future without outside pressures. The next morning, more news arrived. Martha had been summoned by the police to give a statement, and her preventive detention was being considered. The evidence is overwhelming, Dr. Miller explained. Between Clara's recordings, the forged documents, and the testimonies of the other victims, the case against her is practically airtight. And the assets she stole? Grant asked. They will all be returned to the original families, including Mrs. Eleanor's farm. Clara felt tears of joy. Finally, justice would be served. What about the legitimate Fernandez family businesses? Grant wanted to know. Those will remain under your management. The investigation showed you had no knowledge of your mother's criminal schemes. Does that mean Grant will retain control of the farm? Clara asked. Yes, and since you are married, Clara will also have rights to the assets. It was an irony of fate. The arranged marriage that had begun as a way to steal property ended up ensuring Clara and Grant had the legal rights to correct Martha's crimes. 3 days after the article was published, Martha was officially arrested for racketeering, fraud, and coercion. The arrest was widely publicized in the national press, becoming a landmark case of crimes against small rural producers. Clara and Grant could finally return to the farm, finding Martha gone forever. The mansion that had been a gilded prison was now truly theirs. It's strange to be here without her, Grant commented, walking through the empty halls. Do you want to move? Clara asked. We could sell this estate and start somewhere else. Actually, Grant said, stopping to look at her, I'd like to talk about our future before making any decisions about the house. Clara felt her heart race. It was the conversation she had avoided throughout the whole ordeal. What do you want to talk about? Clara, I know our marriage started as a sham, but during these months what? I truly fell in love with you. The confession left Clara speechless for a moment. Grant, I know you may not feel the same. I know you may want to annul the marriage now that we're free. But I wanted you to know that for me, you've become the most important person in my life. Clara stepped closer to him, taking his hands. Grant, I fell in love with you too. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere in the middle of all this I realized I couldn't imagine my life without you. They embraced, finally free to express feelings that had been suppressed by months of pretense and survival. So, Grant said, pulling back to look her in the eyes, do you want to stay married to me? For real, this time? I do, Clara answered without hesitation. But I want it to be our choice, not anyone else's. How about we renew our vows? A real ceremony with the people we choose the way we want it. Clara smiled, imagining a simple ceremony at her mother's farm, with only true friends and the family that truly mattered. I would love that. 6 months later, Clara and Grant renewed their vows in an intimate ceremony at the Harrison farm, which had been completely restored with some of the money recovered from Martha's schemes. Eleanor, radiant in a light blue dress, walked Clara to Grant, who waited under a simple flower arch set up in the yard, where the white horse grazed peacefully. Clara Harrison, the community pastor asked, do you take Grant Sterling as your husband, choosing him freely for love? I do, Clara answered, this time without hesitation or pretense. Grant Sterling, do you take Clara Harrison as your wife, choosing her freely for love? I do, Grant said, his eyes shining with happy tears. The kiss that sealed the new marriage was long and passionate, completely different from the formal peck of the first ceremony. The party took place in the farm's backyard, with live music played by local musicians and food prepared by the neighbors who had supported the family during the difficult times. During the party, Scott approached the couple to share updates on the case. Martha was sentenced to 12 years in prison, he informed, and other investigations have been opened in neighboring regions based on the work we did here. Does that mean other criminals will be caught? Clara asked. We hope so. Your case opened the authorities' eyes to this kind of scheme. You helped save many families you don't even know. Clara felt proud to have contributed to a greater change. The suffering they had faced resulted in protection for other vulnerable people. And the Sterling family businesses? Grant asked. They continue to thrive under your management. In fact, the transparency you brought has greatly improved the results. It was true. Grant had implemented ethical practices across all family businesses, transforming the company's reputation from predatory to exemplary. As the night went on, Clara and Grant stepped away from the party for a private moment on the porch of the house where it all began. We did it, Clara said, looking at the stars. We really did it. We did more than survive, Grant corrected her. We found each other. And now, what are our plans? Grant smiled. Now we live our life. For real. No pretense, no fear, no outside pressures. You mean we can truly be happy? I mean, we already are. Clara nestled into his arms, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in years. The white horse, grazing calmly in the backyard, lit by the party lights, was no longer a symbol of sacrifice, but of a new beginning. The farmer had indeed traded her daughter for a horse, but fate turned that sacrifice into a story of true love, courage, and redemption. End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of overcoming and true love? Tell us in the comments if you believe Clara and Grant made the right decisions. Leave a like if the story moved you and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other amazing stories like this one. Your opinion is very important to us.